Hello, and welcome to Monumental, where we sit down with entrepreneurs, leaders, visionaries, and big thinkers making monumental change. Here's your host, Evan Holiday.
Chris, great to have you on the show, man. How you doing?
Doing good, bud. Thanks for having me.
Yes, glad to have you on Monumental. I was recently on your all's podcast, Real Estate Experience.
Yes.
And loved being on the show.
We're happy to have you.
And so let's just dive right in and
Sure,
kind of
man.
go into how you got into real estate and where you got to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So where I like to start it, Long Island, New York, born and raised. Went to Hofstra University from 2010 to 2014, which is also on Long Island. Played Division I soccer there, and kind of like a somewhat typical student athlete, didn't really have a plan coming out of it, didn't really know what I was going to do. And just lucky enough, had really good friends in places that hooked me up with a Division II assistant coaching job up in Massachusetts, in Worcester at Assumption College. So decided I've got nothing else to do. Why don't I go up there, give it a try? I had done coaching for years and years as I've grown up for younger kids. So it was just a natural transition for me, and went up there, and I really loved college coaching. There were just a lot of other hurdles in the way that eventually made me change. So, the biggest one was being a Division II assistant soccer coach. I made $5,000 a year part-time. So I had to go, scrap other jobs. I had to live on campus with the head coach in a 1-bedroom, but I lived in the living room to get free housing.
Wow.
So I made it work to get my foot in the door of what I thought I could see my career going. The other problem too is if you want to scale up in that world, you got to be willing to move wherever in the country, whenever, to move up if you want to move up fast. And when I did that year in Massachusetts, it was a nice small city. Worcester's like a mini Boston in a lot of ways, and it was fun. But I just really missed home, missed New York, missed my friends, missed my family most of all. And I was like, I just want to go back. I want to, be where I'm comfortable, where I enjoy, and be with the people who I like spending time with. So it was good. If it wasn't for those big roadblocks, I might've been a college coach, and this would have been a, totally different podcast I would have been on, but that's not how the world works. So got another coaching job, for Queens College in Queens, New York. But instead of doing more coaching on the side, I decided to look for a more business secondary job, and applied for tons of places. I mean, I applied for things as low as Starbucks and McDonald's, and somehow didn't get calls there, but got a call with a small stock brokerage company on Long Island. And basically they said, you come in, you cold call, we train you up for 6 months, you get licensed, and then that's when you can start making money and really be in the investment world. And I was like, okay, cool, that works. I'll give this a try, right? Worst case scenario, it's just my first real resume builder and my first foray into the quote unquote business world. So did that, and became very, very interested in the investment world and what it all meant. My parents, without me realizing it until I've been going through this for the past few years. So that was 2015 for reference. And they had always prototypical, people that just saved up, live below their means, put money away for years and years and years. And then eventually, retired early and, did very, very well for themselves. So I knew a lot of what it took to get into the market and how they would buy things. But this was okay, it's instead of hearing it from them, it's experiencing it myself. So learned a ton. First foray into investment really got me interested in the investment world. But again, there was just another large stumbling block in that industry where I wasn't overly thrilled by either the culture of the company or the industry itself. I've only worked for that one company, so it's tough for me to say, but I think it's partly the industry too. And the biggest one was, it was always, how much can my clients make me, not what can I make my clients? And for me, that was a big problem. And it hit home a couple months after I was licensed. So I got licensed January 2016, which coincidentally is when I also got introduced to real estate for the first time, but we'll get to that.
Nice.
Couple months in, my aunt called me and super sweet. Asked, she said, hey, if I gave you my retirement account and transferred it over to your brokerage, would that help? And I was like, I can't take this because I know my bosses aren't going to let me do what I think is going to be best for her from a retirement standpoint because they want to generate commissions for the company. And I was just like, no, I can't. I made up some excuses like, no, I can't do it. But once that happened, I was like, okay, this is the day. And now we're going to figure out how to leave. Obviously it took me a few more months to finally leave, but I wanted another job before just going, unemployed. So backtrack a little bit, January 2016, got licensed, and just coincidentally at the same time, my mom and my cousin bought a flipping course. My mom was either retiring or just retired, and my cousin was an agent and working a full-time job, and they both wanted to do it and decided to drag me along. And that was like my first introduction into real estate. Only other things I had done was I had lived in a house growing up, and I had rented a house my senior year of college to just show people how little I knew at the time. I thought asbestos was a type of mold, which obviously is not the case for anybody that's in real estate. So I learned that quickly. Spent the next, few months really learning the business, learning from the education course, podcasts, a few books. I'm not the biggest reader in the world. I'm getting better though. Different resources like Bigger Pockets and things of that nature. And then we started trying to flip homes for the next few months and just flat out failed. 6, 7, 8 months. I've never flipped a home on Long Island. Never successfully flipped a home. I have a failed flip in Charleston, but that's a story for another time. But yeah, never flipped. And we started kind of getting into that 6, 7, 8th month. And we were just like, what do we do? We're beating our head against the wall. Like, let's change, let's pivot, let's do something else. And what we decided to do was say, let's find someone with some experience. Let's bring something to the table and let's see if we can partner with them. So spoke to a few people and everyone was like, no, we don't want to partner, but we're always looking for hard money lenders. So we were able to, scrap some dollars together, found a lender and said, hey, we'll give you a loan. We'll be your hard money lender. All we want in extra is just some insight into your process and how you do things like that. And that was fine. And we learned a little bit, but not a ton. Wasn't as experienced as we thought, but through him, we met John Cohen, who's the co-owner at the company I work for now and where I've worked for almost the last 4 years. And when we sat down with John, originally when we were talking, we were just telling him what we wanted to do. He had just come out of buying tax deed properties at auction down in Philadelphia and said, maybe you guys can flip those. If you do that, I'll kind of show you how to do it a little bit, 60, 70% of what to do. You guys just run with it, do what you want. So decided to give that a try. My mom did not want to drive down. So me and my cousin drove down. You would drive them all Sunday. The auction was on, you would drive them all Saturday. The auction was Sunday. Drove, got to be 50, 60 properties, something like that. And just flat out hated it. It was a really rough drive down, a rough drive back, and just in not the nicest neighborhoods with super, super rough properties. So we were just like, this just kind of looked, saw the writing on the wall, like knew it wasn't going to be it. My cousin, like I said, was already working 2 jobs, either had just had his first kid or was about to have his first kid. My mom just had no desire to go down. And I was like, so I'm going to be stuck doing this all by myself. And I didn't want to do it either. So I was like, okay, we'll figure something else out. So I came back, sitting down with John, just said, thanks, but not going to be right for us. And as we were talking, he's like, hey, just so you guys know, I'm raising money for this little 8-unit property in Covington, Kentucky, right across the river from Cincinnati. Think you guys should check it out. If you have any interest, let me know. And we just started learning about it and we thought it was interesting. Just felt like it was kind of where we could see ourselves going just from the business plan standpoint. And basically did the same thing as the flip with his cousin. And we said, hey, we'll invest passively. All we want is just can we get coffee once a week, every other week, just pick your brain, learn more about the deal hands-on. And he was like, sure. So invested in that, learned a ton for the next few weeks and just had really good connection synergies with them and said, hey, we want to do this. But we want to do this with you. Would you be interested if we took some work off your plate and we joint ventured and, helped you do more deals? And he was like, sure. So we bought another 17 units in the same area. So instead of just being a passive investor, we were on the general partnership. And then we also joint ventured on another 82 unit down in Jacksonville, Florida. And then we were also going to do, I always forget this. I honestly, sometimes I forget it happens, but we were going to do another 86 unit down in Jacksonville, Florida. And we actually walked on it after due diligence, unfortunately, and lost all the money we made in the acquisition fee on the first Jacksonville property. We lost doing the second one. Not the deposit, but just, cost of doing business, due diligence, things like that. So, but right around the time we were closing the 17 unit, I think it was like August 2016, I was done. I was still working as a stockbroker, and I was done. I just wanted out, didn't care anymore. And I was like just about to quit with nothing else lined up. And, just luck of the draw or something, just sitting down with John one day, just one-on-one, having a conversation, small world. He had worked for the same exact people I was working for, just at a different company about 5 years prior, and just got it, understood where I was coming from. Told him, I think I want to try real estate full time, but we're just not there yet. He's like, why, it's a little early, but why don't you come help me and my partner, Don, at Toro? We do bigger projects, 100, 200, 300 unit properties in the Southeast and the Midwest. We'll do a trial basis. I forget if it's either like 3 months or 6 months. I don't even remember, to be honest. But I said, sure. So met Don. He was cool with it. So, like the next week I quit, drove from that office to the new office and just started working there, just coached me up through the process. I guess the trial went well because I'm still there 4 years later, basically. And yeah, now I'm kind of, my title is asset manager, but my two main responsibilities are asset manager and acquisitions, but I help from everything from equity, debt, insurance, disposition, the whole nines. But primarily running like the Florida region of our portfolio, which is about like right around 1,000 units, give or take, of 4,000.
That's amazing, man. I love the journey, like the ups and downs of it all, and how you tried many different avenues before you finally found the one that fit you and fit where you were going and fit your skill set, and was a good vibe with the company and the group. I think that's all really important. Is first off, just keep trying to find, keep trying different avenues until you find the one that fits, and then also just being a willing participant and just putting yourself out there, and then finding people who are where you want to be and say, hey, look, I'll buy you coffee, I'll invest in your deal. Like, I just want to learn what's going on here and how can I do something similar to this, either in partnership with you or on my own or whatever.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons I like to start as far back as I did is because as I talk with different people and try to give back and help other people looking to get into this, a lot of times the question is like, where do I start? What do I do?
Yeah.
What type of real estate should I be in? And my answer is always the same. And if you, listen to any podcast, you should know without having to ask me, but I understand that's not always the case. But it's go research, 10 different asset classes and 10 different ways to get involved in that asset class. You do that, you'll have 100 different ways to do it. And you just got to figure out what's right for you. You got to figure out like what's your risk tolerance. Are you looking to be in your backyard or across the country? Like, there's so many different components that go into it besides just returns or what you can make, or what resources you have. There's personal preference to it as well. And then you just got to try. You're never going to figure, like, even if you found 100 different ways of doing this business, 1,000 different ways, without trying, you're never going to know what's right for you. And even since I moved on to Toro and primarily doing the, we'll call it the larger multifamily assets, I've still looked at several other different options to either do on the side or add to the business with Toro. Like I looked at land flipping, mobile homes, Airbnb. We've looked at several different things. I actually considered one time buying a laundromat on the side. Like I'm constantly going down the path of new things and seeing how far I get until I kind of weed it out or try it. And I just think it's important because that's how you learn. You're never going to know. Everybody is different. So people are going to tell you what is right, but it's really what's right for them. And that's if they're being truthful. So I think it's really important to see that. And also not in the real estate world too. I worked 3 or 4 different jobs before I even, found my way into real estate. So it was the first couple of years, just figuring out what I wanted to do, giving it a real good go of it, making sure like, hey, like, don't just try it for 2 months, like stay in a little bit longer, make sure it's not just like, the first hurdle that you hit and you give up.
Yeah.
And you just kind of find your way.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I think you're right where when you're taking advice, also remember that if people are doing something and it works for them, that it could be their sweet spot or it could be what they enjoy. So just always remember to think about it from your perspective and what you enjoy most and what the avenue you want to go down and try out and pursue. And like you said, just take action on it. I think that's one of the biggest things. Find people who are doing it, learn from them, take action, be a student, constantly be a student, and you're gonna grow and do bigger things and keep pushing your comfort level bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah. And I think what's important too is you're never going to really know until you try anyway. So you might as well start sooner and start that clock, because if
Yeah.
you try to get an extra 2% of knowing better what you like, but it takes you 6 extra months, good shot you would have found it out and you'd be 6 months closer to where you are. So if you just, yes, you have to do some research up front to understand. You can't just throw a dart at the map and figure out what's right for you.
Yeah.
Because I would love to build skyscrapers in Manhattan, but I don't have hundreds of millions of dollars. It's just not happening. But once you kind of narrow it down to, okay, here's some realistic things that I can try, start. Because one, if you're never going to know otherwise what would have happened, right? If you're like, oh, I'm thinking wholesaling, or I'm thinking mobile home parks. If you do one, you're never going to know what would happen if you would have done the other. So just pick one, go with it, and start that clock of learning. And if it's not right for you, the time you would have waited, you would have just taken you longer to get there. So at some point, you just got to start and go and figure it out and realize the first one's probably not going to be right. It's probably going to take you, several months, a couple years to figure out what's right for you. And if you get it right on the first shot, good job. Like, it is what it is. So
Yeah.
I think that's important too.
Yeah. I think it's momentum. If you think about, like,
Yes.
it's getting that ball moving. It's going to take a while to get the actual boulder moving, but once you get it moving, you can't stop it. But getting to that first deal or that first business or that first sale, whatever it is, like, getting there is going to be uncomfortable. But once you do that, you're going to learn so much about yourself and your style and your business, whether you like it or not. And the quicker you get to that kind of fork in the road, the better off you're going to be.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's important too, because there's a lot of different people in this world. And a lot of times I think the people that have success as their own company or doing it on their own are often the people that are willing to just dive in and figure it out. And I also, I'm not, an owner of Toro. I'm not a principal of Toro. I don't have my own company today. And the reason I like to still, come on podcasts and things and talk like that is because you don't necessarily have to be, like, oh, I'm going to dive in headfirst and figure it out on my own. Like, I leveraged a ton of other people to figure it out.
Yeah.
Because that's just not who I am. Like, I am to a certain degree, like, I will dive in and figure it out, but I'm not diving headfirst. I'm like, let's dip a toe in here, there, and first, and let's test it out a little bit more. And that's okay. Like, I'm comfortable. That's just me. Like, I'm never going to be the person that just dives into the new venture and is going to figure it out or fail. I'm going to, test things out, and then I'm going to decide whether to dive in. And a lot of them, I'm still going to fail. But you don't necessarily have to be like, hey, I'm 100% into wholesaling today. You can, work with people, work for people, figure out different ways that work best for you. Because sometimes I think there is too much of a message in the other way when there's a lot of different ways to do it.
Yeah. That's actually part of my story too, is, I worked for a developer for 6 years and it was entrepreneurial in a sense where we were doing our own deals, but I come from the same place where you're at, is like, I learned from somebody and it was
Mm-hmm.
amazing. And I probably learned more in those 6 years than I ever would have on my own.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least a lot more quickly. And comes back to mentoring and coaching and the fact that I had these guys that combined had like over 100 years experience. And I got to basically be one office down from them and call them, and they showed me how to do the deals. And so it's powerful.
100%. Yeah. I think being able to see how more experienced people do it intimately has definitely pushed me along further from an experience level. If I had done it myself from the beginning, I may have been better off financially or on paper, let's say, like reputation wise. But I don't care as much about that because I'm playing a 20-year game, not a 2-year game or a 2-month game. So I'm okay with taking the back seat for several years, or even, who knows? I could just, be at Toro for the next 20 years for all I know. And, either just invest in the deals we do or just do stuff on the side. Like, nobody's saying you have to do this full time on your own. Like, that's the really great thing I think about real estate investing. And it was a really good conversation we had with somebody in our podcast who works for like mid-sized shop with 10, 15 employees. And he's a younger kid, he's like 24, 25. His name's Chris Ford. And it was just really interesting to talk about like, hey, yeah, you can work for like a private equity real estate and you can literally take what you learn and replicate on the side with like duplexes, fourplexes, 5, 10 units if you want, or small retail centers. Like, you can take what they do for multi-million dollar properties and take that blueprint and directly apply it to something on a 10th or 100th of the scale.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's really great about the real estate industry compared to a lot of other industries, especially in the finance world. That is very easy to do. You just save up some money and do it slowly on your own or with a couple small partners. And you don't necessarily have to go full time or off on your own and start your own company if you don't want to. Because there's a lot of people that like having that stability and that security while they build something up. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just all what you want and figuring out a way to back into it and do it. And I'm not saying that's what I'm going to do. I have no idea. I'm not saying one way or the other, but they're both options. And I just think it gets discounted too much sometimes.
And I think that's honestly one of the things I absolutely love the most about real estate is there's a million different ways to do a deal. There's a million different types of deals. There's a million different ways to finance a deal, to invest in deals. It's just so creative and you can literally structure a deal however which way you want. Mm-hmm. And that's the exciting thing about it is like, there's no one right way to do any of this.
No, it really is. And I think it's important too. Like, I'm still learning every day. Like, I just learned what a subject to property is today. Like, I had heard of it, but I didn't really know what it was. And from the little I read, it's basically you take the deed, but they keep the mortgage, but you pay for them as you do something. I don't fully understand it, to be honest, but it's like, like when I Googled it, it was like fucking 40 million hits. I was like, all right, clearly this is popular and a lot of people know about it, but for some reason it just never hit my radar. And it's like, that's just such a creative way. Like, I would have thought of that concept. I just wouldn't have known that's the name for it. And it was that common.
No, you just taught me something. So there we go.
But that's like a really common thing to do with like, it's basically like a house that's already going into foreclosure. You step in, you make the payments, you either fix the property up or you get somebody paying again and you take title for the property and you own it and you just don't have to go get a new mortgage basically. Apparently it's like, I think what it is a lot of people use it as a way to do like no money down real estate. I don't understand how that's possible because how are you going to fix a property that's underperforming with no money down? But that's somebody else can explain that to you. I don't know. But it's just like, constantly learning new things. And that's like a really creative way to structure a deal that I didn't know about beforehand. That I probably could have figured out just because, I could have been like, if I sat down and thought about it long enough, and I was like, how do I make this deal work? Probably could have figured it out, but I wouldn't have known that's the name. And, quick Google search would have told me what it is. But yeah, I mean, thousands of different ways to do it. So yeah, definitely don't limit yourself. Continue to learn about new things because one way is working too, doesn't mean something else isn't going to work better or isn't going to be a good complement or supplement to what you're already doing. Right? If you're a wholesaler, I would strongly encourage you to start once you get a good revenue stream going, start piecing some of that money off into, some equity in deals, whether it's, buy and hold multifamily, mobile home parks, invest as an LP in a syndication. Even if you want to throw it in REITs or something else, like, you should really start looking for other things. I mean, we do all the time. I'm looking for different things all the time to diversify. So, there's no reason to stop looking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, we, at Holiday Ventures, we have the GC side, the architect firm, they're basically just serving our development side, but there's still other ways that we can, create a more vertically integrated company.
Yeah. I'm sure. Do you guys do like fee architecture and stuff too?
No, we just everything in house.
Gotcha. No, that's good. I
So
mean, look, just helps you keep quality control and everything,
yeah.
which is definitely undervalued in our space, but yeah, that's a whole other conversation.
So you're wearing this hat, content
Yes.
creator.
Yes.
I love that you're wearing it because that was something I wanted to bring up was you're very good at creating quality content.
Thank you. I try.
Podcast, YouTube, Instagram. You connected with Gary Vee. Tell me why that's important to you.
I think so. My mom was an educator all my life, and I think there's a part of me that has that as well. Like I said, I did youth coaching from the time I was 12 years old, coaching, my little sister. Like, I used to play goalie when I was a kid, and I would do goalkeeper training for her team just on the side for some extra bucks. I would work at my aunt's nursery school, watching little kids, teaching them and, things like that. It was more babysitting, but still teaching a little bit. And that was just something that stuck with me and that I found rewarding. And, you know, I honestly really thought I was going to end up being a college coach as I was doing it. If not for those other things, I probably would still be doing it because it was a very rewarding job and something I enjoyed a lot. Like there's not, for me, not a lot better than taking time and teaching somebody a skill or something, and then all of a sudden you see the light bulb switch and they get it or they can start to do it. And that's easier to see in athletics because it's like they either do it or they don't, right? Like they either mess it up or, whatever. But it's been really cool to take that aspect of one part of me and be able to bring it out in a way for multiple people, not so direct. We've talked about doing like coaching and things like that. I just never really wanted to be directly responsible for someone's success or failure in a business that has significantly more, what's the word I'm looking for, variables than I can control. As a college coach, you dictate a lot of what the kids do or your players do. And, obviously if they aren't doing what they're supposed to do, they're going to fail, but most of them, you're on top of them enough. If you're a paid coach in this world, unless you're like one-on-one mentor, like I'm going to look over your shoulders and you're paying, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you're only, you're a one-on-one coach, like you only have one client or two clients at a time. I don't think you get that enough. I think it's too like laissez-faire. And I was just always worried. I never wanted somebody to come back to me and say, hey, I gave you 10 grand or 20 grand and, I didn't get a deal from it. So I've just never said like, that's not what I want to do. And I've seen guys like Gary Vee, Dave Meltzer, Tom Bilyeu, tons of other guys that just put out this stuff at scale and consistently. And you're able to basically pick up the lessons they would be teaching anyway over time. It's probably not as direct. They're not going to address your specific scenario.
Yeah.
But if you're intelligent enough and you listen and you take the relevant parts and apply it to what you're doing, you can extrapolate, 60, 70, 80% of what they would tell you in a one-on-one setting. And it's just really a way for me to like give back. So when we started meeting with John back before I joined Toro, one of the first things we did was start a free meetup event locally every single month. We skipped a couple months here and there, and we had a run of about 4 or 5 months where we stopped just because it was getting a lot. But yeah, I mean, we did that 100% free out of our pocket. It never really generated a whole lot of business for us. Yeah, we got a couple people that invested, but largely it was just a way to give back and, get the stuff that we had gotten from other people. And it's awesome. Like it was really cool to see about like 3-4 months ago. We had a good friend of ours, an investor, and somebody who we met through the meetup, who I actually met through my cousin. His name's Lance. He came on our podcast just to talk about like his experiences as a passive investor, from the meetup and starting to do it himself. And at one point, John Essen was like, hey, if like we didn't do that meetup or you didn't meet us, like, what do you think would happen? And he said, like, I probably still would have like ended up doing it, but I don't think I would have done it as quickly or as successfully otherwise. And I
Nice.
didn't catch it during the podcast, but afterwards I was like, damn, that's pretty cool. Like that, it was like
Yeah.
that same feeling of like, it was a much slower burn. And I don't think I would have realized it if John hadn't asked, but I think there's an equally powerful way to impact people and help. Maybe just not in as much of a direct setting. So
Yeah.
yeah, for me, it's just one of those ways to fill that avenue, selfishly in order to teach or give an opinion. You also have to have a really good understanding of it yourself. So it's been really good from that standpoint of like, I have to make sure I feel comfortable in what I'm talking about,
Yeah,
that
definitely.
my base knowledge is secure and, with very few holes or minimal holes. So it helps from that standpoint too. But it's just been awesome to give back and also just connect with people. Like, if we weren't doing that, I probably wouldn't be here talking to you. Probably wouldn't have done the mastermind that we do, once a month. So really cool things like that too, that, not only help me, but just help other people.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's similar for myself as well. It's like, why not share the knowledge that we have, or share a connection, or share anything? Because 9 times out of 10, you're going to help a lot more people than you realize. I mean, same thing with Monumental, man. It's like, it blows you away at first. You're like, whoa, like, I didn't know we were having this much impact or helping this many people. I didn't know people were taking action on what we were saying. And then you look back, you're like, wow, we can really do some good out of this and help a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people. And that's powerful, man. So anybody listening, I highly recommend, like, figure out how you can just give back, and whether that's creating content, or just helping others that are one step behind you and want to get to where you're going.
That's huge. What you just said is huge. And that was the tipping point for me. Like 2 years ago, we were still in like an older office and I was 26 at the time. I know I'm still young. Like I'm 20 in the grand scheme of things, 28, only call it 4 years of experience, maybe 2.5 years of like really knowing what the fuck I'm talking about. Sorry if you don't like cursing, but it is what it is.
All good.
Like I held off because I was like, who am I? Like who am I to give my opinion or tell people or like educate people? And it was an interesting turning point where it didn't hit me until I started doing a little bit. So I actually started doing it because I realized I was like, I know I can help some people, but I stopped after a while and for a few months. And then what started happening was both my parents are very smart, but my mom was obviously more educated in the real estate stuff than my dad was. And my dad picks up things very fast. He's very intelligent. He has very good questions. He really likes to dig into things and understand it. And the tipping point for me was when we were having conversations and I was telling things or explaining things to him that he didn't know about or he didn't really fully understand and was like trying to learn. I was like, okay, if there's this guy that, he built a successful business that he exited when I was a kid, he retired super early, he's just really good at, the things he undertakes. I'm like, if he doesn't know this stuff and I can explain it to him, there's got to be millions of people
Yeah,
that
exactly.
don't know what I know. And there's hundreds of millions of people, if not billions of people, who don't have the
Yeah.
exposure to the stuff that I have exposure to. Just being in the office and getting an email with a $10 million property. Like, it's so crazy to think about, but there's actually billions of people who have never had that experience or don't know what it's like. And I'm not trying to say that in an arrogant way, but that's just the reality. And that's a lot of things. Like,
Yeah.
that's why I think social media is really cool. And that's why I think in particular, I don't know if you're on TikTok at all, but TikTok has been really
A
cool
little bit. Yeah.
because right now, because it's changing for sure, but there's not as many people and eyes on it where it's gotten more like commercial yet. Dude, there's so many people doing like these cool little things you'd never know of. Like there's like people doing
Yeah.
like woodworking, people like making knives,
I know. I know.
people
There's
like
some
just
phenomenal
super
videos on there.
creative. But it's the same concept of like, even within the real estate community, there's so many people that would love to have the exposure that I have, and it would almost be selfish to not talk about it and, just give a little insight into it if I'm able to. So once I started thinking about it that way, I was like, okay, like
Yeah.
you're underselling yourself basically.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people do. Like
Yeah.
I'm talking to one guy right now who's like an agent who's, he's just a real estate agent, but has construction and other stuff. And it's like, more than somebody else, and your background is going to give you other experiences that give you a different insight into other people. So
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
maybe you didn't have, $100 billion business, but you can help the 16-year-old kid that wants to be an agent, or the 18-year-old kid
Yeah.
that is looking to get into real estate, or the 50-year-old woman who's looking to be an agent or get into real estate.
Yeah.
Or
That's the thing, is you really never know, like, sharing your story, how many people you're going to affect. And I think we all have our own unique story that we can share, and it
yeah,
will end up helping people. But you're right. A lot of people get scared to share it. I was there when I first started. Like you said, you were, it's a lot of people go through that, but it's once you get past that hurdle, you're like, oh, I'm actually going to do more good than I, built it up to be in my head of, that's really what it comes down to.
yeah.
Chris, before we could probably keep going on and on for another couple of
For
hours,
sure.
but let's jump into our monumental questions.
Sure, man.
What does success mean to you?
Success to me, I think, is freedom. Freedom to live the life you want, freedom to make the choices you want, freedom to make changes as you want. And I think a lot of that is financial freedom. And I think people get that confused with having a butt ton of money, which is not the same.
Yeah.
It's having the assets and the revenue streams and the income in place that if you want to pick up for a month and go to Europe and travel by yourself or with family or friends, you have the ability to do that. Or, if you want to start a new venture, start a new hobby, like you
Yeah.
just have the freedom to do that. Or if you want to continue to work your job or continue to build a business, you can. And to me, that is success because the freedom, I think, would bring me and a lot of other people a tremendous amount of happiness.
Yeah. I love it. What about daily habits or morning rituals that you have?
So I'm not the best for this. It's something it's something I'm personally working on. Something I've found very helpful recently though, is I've started chunking my day. So what I do is either the night before or get up and I work out. And then when I sit down with coffee in the morning, because I'm a New Yorker and I drink tons of coffee, I'll plan out my day. And it's like at 7 a.m. I'm going to do this, and 7:30 I'm going to do this, and 8 a.m. I'm going to do this. And that's really helped me recently, like stay on track and get things done.
Yeah.
So that, and also task management, those two things have been super helpful of like, hey, like here's like our, here's our big goal, our quarterly goal, our monthly goal, our weekly goal. And those smaller goals lead to accomplishing those larger goals. Those things have been super helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. That's what we do a lot of as well.
Mhm.
What about favorite book or book you're currently reading?
So I am not the biggest reader. A lot of people know that. I am trying to basically force myself to do better. However, I'm currently listening to Ray Dalio's Principles, and I love it.
Oh,
I
that's a
think
good one.
it's so interesting to hear his mindset.
Yeah.
Right now he's talking about like looking from the top down and seeing the system as a whole. And I was just talking with I actually did another podcast today with Austin Linney, and we spoke about that at length. And it's just something that has been playing in my head a lot of like how this relates, because I had already been looking at like learning more about the secondary debt market and like macroeconomics and how it plays in with the markets. And a lot of people get into real estate so they don't have to worry about that stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm almost starting to think, and I don't know yet for sure because I'm still learning, I'm still thinking about it. I almost think that's a mistake to a certain degree, where you do need to have some sort of understanding of how that works, because as we've just seen, the world is one big machine. And if one part or many parts stop or break down, even your part that should be fine is going to be affected.
Yeah.
So it's been an interesting coincidence how it's kind of all lined up with everything going on. But I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It's long as hell. It's not a short book.
Yeah.
It's going to take me a couple weeks to get through, but I'm enjoying it right now for sure.
I love it. Well, Chris, first off, thank you so much for being on the show, sharing your story. I love everything you're doing. I love having you on the show today. For our Monumental listeners, where can they follow you, reach out to you, connect with you?
Yes. First, thank you so much for having me on. It was great. Always enjoy talking with you and connecting with you. Best way to follow me basically on every social media is Chris Grenzig. Right now, the main ones are Instagram at chris.grenzig or LinkedIn, Chris Grenzig, but YouTube, Facebook, TikTok even, but I'm not really doing a whole lot now.
I'm going to have to follow you on TikTok now.
You can. I'm still trying to figure it out. So
yeah,
if everybody's got any tips, hit me up. But we also have our podcast, The Real Estate Investing Experience. We're on all platforms, YouTube, Spotify, Apple. We just launched a Facebook group around it called the Real Estate Investing Experience. And what we're trying to do is, we do a ton of content on all those platforms. We're trying to make it not content oriented. We're trying to make it community oriented. So, tons of different insights, conversation, things like that.
Yeah.
So you can find that on Facebook, obviously, if you go to groups and search it. Or you can email me if you want to just get directly in touch with me, chris@tororep.com, TOROREP.com. That's also our website if you want to check out the company.
I love it, man. Guys, take Chris up on that. He's got massive, massive value, content, amazing stuff on Instagram, LinkedIn. I'm sure all the other platforms too. But Chris, thank you again for being on. Guys, if you enjoyed today's episode, share on social media. Let Chris know you're watching. Let him know what your favorite part of today's episode was. Tag him, tag me. And guys, with that, have a monumental day.